What do you get when you cross a fairy with a mortal? You get Tristan Thorn, the main character of the novel Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Now, this is a young adult book. The author is also the author of Coraline, which was turned into that um, animated film, which I haven't seen, but I heard was good. So I want to talk to you today about Stardust, which even though it is a young adult book, it did read, very much like a page turner. I was really mesmerized by this book from beginning to end. Um, so in the book, Tristan Thorn is the product of a man who went into a village and he was sort of mesmerized by this bewitched, I think she's a fairy. She was turned into a bird, but she was forced to sell things at a market for this mean witch. And she seduces Mr. Thorne, Tristan's father. And Mr. Thorne has no idea that she's pregnant. So he goes back home to his village and he marries this woman and they live happily ever after, except the baby shows up in the village. And, there's a note, I think, that he is a thorn. So he is raised by Mr. Thorne and his wife as their own child, and he grows up thinking he's their child. And then he falls in love with this woman and he wants to marry her. And she says, "Sure, if you go get that star over there that fell into the sky, if you could go get that for me, I'll give you anything you wish." And so, of course, he goes, looking after the star so that he can bring it back to his beloved woman, and she'll marry him. The problem is when he goes, he has to go through the village gate into this enchanted world. And when he goes in there to get the star, he encounters all kinds of interesting things. And he's on this journey to get the star and then bring the star back. And so many just delightful little enchanting things happened in the book while he was on his journey. And the first one I will share with you. He makes friends with this creature. I'm not really sure what to call each of them. There's like elves, and the star actually takes a life too. So the star, because the star can talk. But in this case, he's made friends with, he calls him, I think, the little hairy creature. But yeah, so here he is talking about the little hairy man, and of course they talk a little bit differently in the story. So I'll read this to you. "I cannot keep up," confessed Tristan. "You walk so confoundedly fast." The little hairy man slowed his pace. "Beg your puddin'," he said, and Tristan stumbled after him. "Bein' on me own so much, I gets used to settlin' me own pace." They walked side by side on the golden green light of the sun through the newly opened leaves. It was a quality of light Tristan had observed unique to springtime. He wondered if they had left summer so far behind as October. From time to time, Tristan would remark on a flash of color in a tree or bush, and the little hairy man would say something like, "Kingfisher, Mr. Halcyon used to call him, pretty bird," or "Purple hummingbird, drinks nectar from the flowers, hovers. Redcap, they'll keep their distance, but don't you go scrutinize 'em or looking for trouble, 'cause you'll find it with those buggers." They sat beside a brook to eat their lunch. Tristan produced a cottage loaf, the ripe red apples, round of cheese, hard, tart and crumbly, that his mother had given him. And although the little man eyed them both suspiciously, he wolfed down and licked the crumbs of bread and cheese from his fingers, and munched noisily on the apple. Then he filled a kettle from the brook and boiled it up for tea. "Suppose you tell me what you're about," said the little hairy man, as they sat on the ground and drank their tea. Tristan thought for some moments, and then he said, "I come from the village wall. There lives a young lady named Victoria Forrester, who is without peer among women, and it is to her and to her alone that I have given my heart. Her face is—" Usual complement of bits, asked the little creature. Eyes, nose, teeth, all the usual. Well, of course. Well, then, you can skip that stuff, said the little hairy man. We'll take it as was said. So, what damn fool silly thing has this young lady got you a doing of? Tristan put down his wooden cup of tea and stood up, offended. What? He asked, in what way he was certain the lofty, scornful tones would possibly make you imagine that my lady love would have sent me on some foolish errand. So that's his first friend that he encounters when he goes to get the star. And then there's all kinds of other little errands that he encounters when he's on his journey. So I recommend this one. I thought this was a really fun, whimsical, magical book filled with wonderful descriptions of setting and some really unique characters and a pretty decent plot too. So if you're interested in a good young adult fantasy, let me recommend Stardust by Neil Gaiman.